Hi, I'm Clever Ghoul, but you can call me Nikki. And this week, we're making a miniature dessert bar cart. I don't know when this popped into my head. It was definitely a few months ago. I kept seeing this little bar cart. So I kept seeing that at Target. I even saw some people on TikTok making these really cute Christmas gifts where they bought mini alcohol bottles and put them on there as like gifts, cute, whatever. But my brain went back to my childhood. Look, I don't know about y'all, but like the chokehold that American Girl had on me in the 90s, it's deep in here. When the catalog would come to your house just randomly, like you'd come home from school at the end of the day and the American Girl catalog was in your house. I'm not getting anything done. I'm just going through that whole catalog and marking every single thing that I want because it's perfect. Let's be real. While I loved my dolls, loved them, still have them, the accessories that came for the dolls were... honestly, I think I would have been satisfied with just the accessories. Sorry, Mom. So when I saw this, all I could think of was, this needs to be a miniature dessert cart. This needs to be a miniature dessert cart. It's like the perfect American Girl doll size. So you could use this to do that for your kids, I guess, if you wanted, like 3 and up. However, I'm also just someone who likes weird little things in their house, and I just think, how funny would it be to just have a random miniature dessert cart in your home? How cute! And if this just sat on a bookshelf, just a random dessert cart on your bookshelf, like, get out of town. How cute is that? I think another fun use for this, honestly, if you're someone who has like an eclectic taste or fun things in their home, or you're just a big kid like I am, you could potentially make the desserts into little magnets and have this sit next to your fridge and then like have the magnets for your fridge. I don't really have the kind of kitchen where I can do that, but I'm just putting that out there if you wanted to do that in your home, in your kitchen, because how freaking cute. As usual, I don't know what I'm doing, so let's go for it.
I found these cute miniature dessert crafting items at Daiso randomly when I popped in earlier in the week and took it as a sign that it was time to do this project. On the far right, you can see the cupcake dough mold that I will be using for this project. The other items are super cute, but the scale is a little off for what I am making this week. But maybe you'll see them in a TikTok soon. As for materials, I had foam clay, Model Magic, and air dry clay, so I knew I was going to utilize those. Looking back now, I think using polymer clay would be a better option since you can cure it quickly using your oven. With the clays I chose, the drying times were as follows. Foam clay takes 24 to 48 hours to dry. Model Magic takes 24 hours to dry or initially set, but 72 hours to fully set. And air dry clay can take 2 to 3 days to dry. To start making the cupcakes, I took out some foam clay and added acrylic craft paint into it. You may recognize that this is the same process I used in making my foam clay gingerbread house if you saw that video. Basically, I added in paint little by little to make the clay a solid color so that I didn't have to go back in and paint on top of it later. It also just looks more like a real baked good when using this method. The cupcake colors I chose were light brown, pink, and off-white. The off-white ended up looking more light brown or tan once cured. Once I made the dough, I would press it in the mold and set the cupcakes to the side to dry. After making cupcakes, I started working on my next dessert for the cart, petit fours. I made 3 rectangles out of foil, rolled some air dry clay, and wrapped the clay around each foil rectangle, like you would a gift box. I used the foil to speed up the drying time. I knew that if I made 3 rectangles out of solid clay, it would be the maximum drying time of 3 days. But if I used a thin layer on top of the foil, it would probably speed up the drying time to 24 hours. I would periodically dip my finger in water to smooth out the clay, trying to mimic the icing-coated look of a real petit four, and once smoothed to my liking, I set them aside to dry. By 36 hours, the desserts were dry. It was now time to focus on the details. I wanted to test out these mini paper cupcake liners to see if they would fit the cupcakes. I also wanted to sculpt some small details for all of the desserts and add some puffy paint icing. Once I found out the liners fit the cupcakes perfectly, it was time to add some icing. I didn't want to cover the tops of the cupcakes completely, so I made an amoebus flower-ish shape and then filled it in. I didn't want the paint to be too thick since it also takes 24 hours to dry, so I tried to spread the paint around with the nozzle. After creating those shapes and filling them in, I added little dots around them while thinking about what flavors they should be. The brown cupcake with pink icing and white dots made me think Neapolitan. The pink cupcake with white icing and pink and red dots made me think strawberry or cherry. And the light brown cupcake with white icing and blue and white dots made me think blueberry. Speaking of blueberry, once I finished icing my cupcakes, I wanted to sculpt a small blueberry to sit on top of that cupcake. I rolled up some Model Magic and made a few different berry bases. Next, I went to create the blueberry calyx, also known as the little star-like shape on top of a blueberry. So I rolled out some more Model Magic into a flat sheet and using a toothpick tried to make a star shape. When I peeled it off, it kind of collapsed on itself, but I carefully put it on top of one of the berries and using the toothpick and my fingers reshaped it until it looked right. I decided I wanted to use those star and heart cookie cutters that came with the cupcake mold, so I flattened some Model Magic and got to cutting. Now it was time to check in on the petit fours. They had dried, but sadly they were cracked all over. I'm not sure what happened, but I think maybe the clay was too thin. I don't know. What I do know is that I wasn't going to let those cracks stop me, so I pulled out the quick seal and got to work. I put a small dollop on one side of the petit four and rubbed it in using my finger. I made a smooth, even layer on each side, adding more quick seal if needed. Then I put them to the side to dry for a couple of hours. In my experience, petit fours usually have a little icing detail on top, most commonly a rose. So I pulled out the Model Magic again and started making tiny roses and leaves to top my petit four. After a couple of hours, the quick seal was dry and it was time to paint my petit fours. I wanted them to be a very light yellow with pink roses on top, which again is how they look in my brain based on my experience. I mixed until I got the color I wanted and then began to paint, doing one layer and letting it dry and repeating the process until I had the coverage I wanted. They kind of ended up looking like little sticks of butter, but I don't really mind. Once dry, I coated them in glossy Mod Podge, blow dried them slightly, and then left them to dry overnight. When I went to check on my desserts in the morning, it was bittersweet to say the least. The cupcakes looked great and dried how I wanted them to. The small clay details I made seemed to have fully dried, which was better than I expected, but then I saw the petit fours. The blow drying had caused a bubble on one of them, but I figured it would be okay when it dried, and it wasn't. The other two also had bubbles, and overall, I just didn't like how they looked. I also didn't have time to fix them, so I took a step back and decided to focus on the cupcakes for now. First, I started with painting the blueberry I had sculpted. I began with a layer of blue, then added in some purple and red tones to it, mimicking what a real blueberry looks like. Next, I painted one of the heart shapes red, thinking it would be like a candy or marshmallow that could sit on one of the cupcakes. Even though I was unsure about the petit fours, I decided to paint the tiny rose and leaf decorations I had made for them. In addition to painting, each element got coated with matte Mod Podge. Finally, using E6000, I attached the elements onto the desserts, and just like that, we're done. Overall, I really like how this project turned out. I wasn't sure of the petit fours at first, but now I don't really think they're that bad. If I had more time, I think I would alter the cart itself by making the railings gold. What desserts would you make? Let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. See you next week.